What's up, guys? Brady Fiel here, coming at you with a review for the new Arch Enemy record Blood Dynasty, released this past Friday, March 28th. Swedish melodeath giants Arch Enemy are back with their now 12th album and their first album since 2022, a few years ago, Deceivers. This is also their first album featuring guitarist Joey Conception, and it's their fourth album with current vocalist Alyssa White-Gluz, who is, and I don't care what anybody says, we can debate about this in the comments, the best vocalist this band has had. I know many Arch Enemy fans have quite a soft spot for Angela and the albums that the band put out with her, but just, I don't know, maybe it's different for me because I'm somewhat of a sort of newer Arch Enemy fan. I mean, not really, but compared to, fans who grew up with them and discovered them back in the 90s, I would say, yeah, I kind of am. While I'm not exactly sure what my favorite Arch Enemy record period would be, I will say my favorite record since Alyssa joined the band is actually the first record with her, War Eternal, back in 2014. That record, I think, just really satisfied my personal taste when it comes to this style of music. It was a good balance between, to my ears, new and old styles of Arch Enemy, I guess. The album had an overall great blend between genuinely catchy and genuinely heavy and punishing, and of course there was a great vocal performance from Alyssa. But that being said, I wasn't really crazy about Will to Power in 2017. That album just felt a lot more bland to me, and Deceivers 2022 was overall solid, but not quite as good as War Eternal, at least for my taste. But now they come back with a good batch of singles that seem genuinely aggressive, genuinely experimental at times, genuinely sounding like a fresh take on the Arch Enemy formula, mainly in the way that the singles kind of push. They've always kind of had the classic metal influences and the thrash metal influences, but these influences are pushed a little bit more on these songs. Like the lead single, Dream Stealer, is a great instance of that, and it's also the first track on this album. Just this track feels like the perfect three-way intersection between classic metal, thrash, and Arch Enemy's signature brand of melodic death metal. And not only does it execute all three of these styles really, really well, but the transitions between all these parts, it flows so smoothly despite having these clear subgenre influences that are somewhat different from each other. Because, right off the bat, the intro, the verses, the pre-chorus, very, very Arch Enemy already, just the overall kind of mellow death style there. But then that chorus is it just reeks of Judas Priest. Obviously with a bit more double bass thrown in there, but Alyssa's raspy, clean singing and just the way she says Dream Stealer, it just instantly teleporting me back to the 80s, but actually in a good way. And I also like that contrast between those raspy, clean vocals and the screams, which sound a little bit more distant, but kind of complement the clean vocals and put them a bit more at the forefront, which is, I think, what they went for here. And then the song manages to just effortlessly flow from that, again, very classic metal influenced chorus into some blatant Slayer worship with that thrash riff. I especially enjoy the second time when it comes around, how it gets the harmony thrown on top and that octave change. And then there's this actually pretty climactic and energetic guitar solo with some really fast drums underneath it. Just if you're a fan of this style of music and this style of metal, it's impossible to turn this off mid-song, because it just keeps you guessing and keeps you hooked the entire time. And I was happy to see that Dream Stealer isn't the only song on the album that does this. And the other songs that do similar things here, they don't sound like copy and pasted the same formula as Dream Stealer. Track 3, March of the Miscreants, has got to be my favorite song on here, period. It opens with that chunky, bottom-heavy riff with some kind of unconventional drum grooves underneath it. It gives a slight nod to tech death. This is another song where the chorus packs so much momentum and energy. I, again, especially love the contrast in the vocals and that kind of call and response thing going on between maybe Alyssa's best vocal performance on the album with those really spacious, almost gang vocal type gutturals, I would even refer to them as, and her more conventional screams, which also sound awesome and honestly better than ever. And then at the 150 mark, the song totally shifts into being more of that straightforward 90s melodic death metal style that reeks of At the Gates, I would even say. And I can't help but have an affinity for that, especially given the fact that it's a 5/7/8 riff, and 2000s metalcore is one of my favorite eras of metal, period. Obviously inspired by At the Gates, but you get what I'm saying. And then it goes from that into this really laid back section that almost leans a little bit folky and very much gives me In Flames vibes. There's that amazing upward crescendo into that solo, and then just for good measure, it kicks back into the original groove of the song to finish out. This is a fucking awesome song. And the other main track that executes this wide array of subgenres together is the closing track and second single, Liars and Thieves. This song the entire time is just fucking relentless. I love it, especially just the way you get that gorgeous harmonized guitar intro, but then it explodes into that aggressive, like, thrash and slightly punky guitar riff. It's almost like somewhat of a fake out, because that guitar intro just sounds so, like, grand and epic, but then it just totally flips and just becomes super aggressive out of nowhere. It's awesome. The verses have a cool contrast between that same part and this, like, almost ascending guitar riff with Alyssa's vocals over it and some double bass under it. And then in the chorus, Alyssa kind of brings back those raspy, Rob Halford-esque clean vocals. And then after the second chorus, right at the 2:15 mark, we get some amazing, powerful, and triumphant clean vocals from Alyssa. And I love the way this song just, like, teases you with it. It's only 10 seconds worth of it, and it sounds fucking awesome. Just the way that part's only there for 10 seconds adds so much to the song, and especially given the fact that it's clean vocals, which, let's just say, Arch Enemy fans might be a little touchy upon including. The fact that they did it this way for just that short little time span in the song makes the song feel way less calculated than if they were to just throw clean choruses in there surrounded by the heavier verses or heavier bridges or breakdowns or riffs or whatever else, which does happen on here for one song, but I'll get into that later. So aside from those three tracks, which are by far my top three tracks on here, there's still some pretty cool songs on here that don't kind of venture out as much as those three tracks do. A Million Suns is a cool track. It has those palm-muted tremolo riffs that drive the majority of this song that really feel like this vortex or this tornado just swirling around you. They sound really chaotic yet controlled. And then the chorus brings in a bit more of that signature melodeath flavor with those triumphant guitars in the background. And overall, this is definitely one of the more just traditional melodeath type tracks on here. But it works. It's interesting enough and has cool enough parts to where it still ends up being a pretty memorable song overall. I also like the kind of lyrical departure that this song goes for, at least compared to this album overall, which kind of brings to mind elements of, like, existentialism. There's lines on here where Alyssa, or the narrator, talks about just feeling small in the overall, like, space of the universe and just overall space being endless. The title track's cool. It was also the third single. I like how in the verses of this song, they go for more of this atmospheric feel with some darker melodies. I kind of wish they did more dark stuff on this album, especially given the just really evil-looking album art and the title being Blood Dynasty, but this song is an example of when they do this and it works really well. The melodies in the verses, dare I say, sort of give me subtle blackened elements, just a little bit. That twangy main riff is cool too. This is definitely another one that has some classic metal influences just in the overall stomp and the more kind of stripped back drums. Ironically, one of my criticisms, especially on Will to Power and even War Eternal a little bit, was the kind of lack of nuance in the drum performances. But this song shows that in the overall, like, context of the album, when they go for at least one song like that, it works really well if it's complemented by a bit more complexity in other parts of the album. And the pendulum I like too. It goes through this really militant groove that drives the song, and it's just really catchy. Again, some cool signature melodeath influences in the chorus, and the song actually probably has my favorite guitar solo on the album too. And I also like how right after the solo there's that short little, like, clean guitar or acoustic guitar break before it kicks back in. So there's definitely some really good songs on here, whether it's the more experimental ones where they draw in all these different influences, or it's the more straightforward ones and songs you'd come to expect from Arch Enemy. But there are definitely a few tracks that not only are forgettable, but a couple that I just plain don't like at all. For me in particular, it's the tracks Don't Look Down and Paper Tigers that I find to just be really forgettable. Don't Look Down is driven by these just really basic and generic sounding thrash riffs, which I like the idea that they went for more of just a straight up thrash style on this song, but it left a bit to be desired for me. And the song also doesn't really do much for me from a lyrical standpoint. It's focusing mainly on these lyrics of rise up, triumph, which is just, it's old, if I'm being honest. There's a line in here that actually says, from the ashes, rise up. How many times have you heard that? And Paper Tiger has both of those kind of similar issues. For one, the main riff in this song just sounds super limp. It's more of a classic metal feel, but it just, the way it comes across, it doesn't nearly get me as hyped as the other main riffs on this album do that I've already highlighted. And lyrically, too, for one, the lyrics on this song are a little bit vague. I think it's some kind of narrative as far as, like, maybe mental health-wise and someone kind of putting themselves down. The first few lines of the song even, it's see no, hear no, speak no evil. That's not very original. And then right after that she says, we're each our own devil and we make this world our hell. And if you read the lyrics to this song, I can't find a clear narrative to grab onto here. Both of these songs, with their underwhelming lyrics and their underwhelming music, they just are clear filler tracks to me. Maybe my biggest disappointment on the album is track 2, Illuminate the Path, which does feature the most prominent clean vocals on the entire album, like I alluded to earlier. They are in the chorus of the song, and although Alyssa performs them really well, I just feel like from a songwriting standpoint, those melodies are a little bit cheesy sounding, I gotta be honest. Again, the lyrics don't really help the song's case. It again tackles that theme of we won't go, we won't run, we'll rise up. But here's the thing, I feel like that chorus and these lyrics might have worked if the rest of the song wasn't so fucking boring. Again, just listen to that main riff. How many times have you heard shit like that before? So kind of an understimulating guitar solo that actually kind of has 2 stanzas, neither of which really do it for me. The harmonized section that comes first just sounds kind of flat, especially with that kind of just basic rhythmic chugging underneath it. I should clarify that by flat, I mean just low in dynamics, not like the guitar's out of tune or anything like that. And same goes for the second part of the solo where it's not harmonized. It's so understimulating. I was also disappointed by that short little interlude track, Presage, I don't exactly know how to pronounce it, but not for the reason you think. I actually think the melodies in this song and that kind of break it gives the album is cool. The reason why this song disappoints me is actually because I don't think these ideas were fleshed out enough. I think if they built an entire song using these ideas, it would have been fucking sick. Like, I have this clear sonic imagery of, like, the potential this song could have had as, like, these calm, delicate verses using those types of melodies, and then, like, this slamming chorus, and it kind of just has these, like, roller coaster dynamics. How fucking sick would that have been? You could show off Alyssa's clean vocals a bit more in the verses, and just overall have a song with some really cool, delicate melodies, and an overall dynamic and unpredictable song structure, and a song that probably stands out in Arch Enemy's catalog overall, which 12 albums in is saying something. But instead of that, we got whatever the fuck they were trying to do on Vivre, Libre. This song sounds like an 80s hair metal power ballad. It is fucking awful. This is probably the one like song on the album where the clean vocals actually sound like a bit over-exaggerated would be a good word. Alyssa is a great clean singer, like seriously, it's taken nothing away from her just from a performance standpoint, but it's this song was a big fat swing and an even bigger and fatter miss. Now, I always respect bands, especially extreme metal bands, for experimenting in more melodic directions, but it's got to be good. And it also feeds into maybe my biggest overall disappointment on the album, in that I was really hoping for, especially given the singles, Arch Enemy to just go for a much darker sound. Again, kind of like I alluded to earlier. Just the album art, the title being Blood Dynasty, again, how the singles sounded and how the more aggressive cuts sound on here. Having these kind of different like moods going on in this album, kind of just sporadically arranged, and having the fucking 80s rock ballad come out of nowhere, it makes the album feel really fragmented, and as a result, it's a little bit jarring to listen to sequentially. You can never really lock in with this album, is the best way of putting it, I think. But, I mean, production-wise, sonically, everything sounds pretty good. I especially love the vocal production. Alyssa's screams in particular sound fucking awesome. And I even more have to compliment her vocal performance on here. She really does sound better than ever. Again, her screams especially, but that's taking nothing away from her cleans. So yeah, I mean, I have my criticisms, but for over half the album being as good as it is, it definitely still makes up for some of the criticisms I have had. And for that reason, I'm going to score this album a 19 out of 30. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think of this album below in the comments if you've already heard it. Remember to hit subscribe for more rock and metal-related content and album reviews. I got my Instagram, Spotify, and Threads links in the description of the video. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.